Before we start, pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge of allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Camera on our postings in order for tonight's meeting.
Can't hear you now. Can't hear you.
All postings in order for tonight's meeting.
Yes, they are.
All right, on the agenda, we don't have any changes or comments.
I would like to, under number 10, unfinished business, I would like to combine the logo, the mission, and the vision statement. In this one.
No?
I know.
Need a motion to approve?
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
All right, we have motion and a second to approve the agenda as published. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, we have meeting minutes for special board meeting minutes for March 8th. I did not have any remarks.
Nor did I. I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve the official Town of Detroit board meeting minutes for Monday, March 8th as written.
All right, motion and second to approve those minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And we have special town board meeting on March 18th.
Move we approve the March 18th special town board meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right, motion and second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And then we have plan commission, March 3rd.
There were no, changes made at the planning commission meeting on Wednesday, April 7th, so I'll make a motion to approve the Town of Detroit Planning Commission meeting minutes for Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021.
All right, motion and second to approve the plan commission meeting minutes for March 3rd. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, treasury report. Kim, I take it you have your part before we have Wendy Unger with Baker Tilly?
Treasurer's report for March 2021, total receipts were $63,266.17. Transfers for March were $460,000. Interest earned was $6.60. Balance as of February 28th was $31,178.33. Total funds for March were $554,451.10. Checks paid in March were $505,830.28, leaving a balance of $48,620.82. And boat launch to date, $3,732.50.
Move we approve the treasurer's report.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Motion to approve the treasurer's report, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, we're gonna do your report before Mr. Tilly?
No, Baker Tilly first.
Okay. Right. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having me here this evening. The board should have in front of them two bound documents, the audited financial statement and the reporting and insights document. I will go through both of those at a very high level. You should have also in your packets a 2-page handout that was given to you. That is what I will use to go through those documents. So tonight we're here to present the financial statement audit. The objective of the audit was to issue an opinion on the financial statements for the town of East Troy. We've done that. We've issued a clean, unmodified opinion on the financial statements, except for the fact that the financial statements do not include the capital asset activity that was required to be included or expected to be included under GASB 34, which was implemented numerous years ago. At that point in time, when the town implemented 34, it was discussed and decided not to include that data at that point in time. if and when the town would ever consider going out to the bond market, that might be something you'd wanna consider implementing, as that, type of opinion would be probably looked on not completely favorable from a bond agency. But again, that's not something that's uncommon or unusual, for organizations such as the town. The reports that we issue as part of the audit process, again, the financial statements and the reporting, and the insights document, gonna touch relatively quickly on the reporting and insights document. That should look and feel a little bit different than what you saw last year. We changed the content and the format for which that information is presented. But again, the information that is included within that document is very similar to what you've had in the past. We utilize that document to communicate comments and recommendations that come up throughout the audit process. We need to have some standard and customary communication with the board under our standards that we are required to follow, and that information is also included in that booklet. Similar to what you've had in the past, there continues to be 2 material weaknesses that are included in that document. One is regarding the segregation of duties at the town. There are not enough individuals within the accounting and financial area to have complete segregation over the accounting processes. And because we as Baker Tilly prepare your audited statements as part of the audit process, that's also looked at as a material weakness. Again, these are not uncommon or different than what you've had in the past, and these, I audit 50 clients or 50 governments, and of those, I would say 95% of them have those. It's just, organizations need to look at the cost benefit of having enough people on staff and somebody able to prepare a materially accurate financial statement on staff. And again, most organizations reach the conclusion that that's not appropriate. Also included in there, again, comments and recommendations that have come up as part of the audit process. Those are listed in there. There were no new comments added this year. There's a few carryovers, and those are really more best practice type items, things that we see within the industry and recommendations that we make for the consideration of the board on an annual basis. Again, as I noted, there's a section in there that is ours, where we communicate the items that we need to under our standards. Again, nothing unusual or unexpected in that section. We talk about the accounting policies that we follow, the estimates that are included within the town's financial statements, whether or not we had any disagreements with management or any troubles performing the audit. The audit this year was all virtual, so we thank Kim for her patience in that process. That is a little bit more involved and more time consuming when she needs to scan and send all the information. So again, we thank her for that. But again, nothing else that I need to draw your attention to within that document. Switching gears then to the audited financial statements. On the bottom of the 2-page handout, I've highlighted the activity of both the general fund and the special revenue, the landfill fund for the town. But we're gonna switch to the top of page 2 before I finish on the bottom of page 1. I apologize, I don't like the order this is in, and I should have fixed it. I'm also going to give you some page numbers as I go through this. This information is contained in your audited statements in much more detail. So you have the ability to look at that at a future date. So talking about the general fund, this is the day-to-day operating fund of the town. This is included on page 30 of your audited statements with a budget to actual comparison. So when we look at the activity of your general fund, we look at it in comparison to prior year, and we look at it in comparison to budget. Again, page 30 highlights the activity for the general fund. Overall, the general fund ended favorably compared to budget for the year. So when you look at page 30, and this is within the audited financial statements booklet, $2.866 million of actual revenue compared to a $2.7 million budget. So you are $165,000 over budget in revenue, a positive scenario. Main reasons for that, keep in mind, during 2020, you received some CARES funding, so you had your routes to recovery money. You had some additional TRIP grant money that came in that wasn't anticipated at time of budgeting, and also your fire dues, which you don't budget your revenue nor your expense, so that's a fluctuation in budget. So that, your intergovernmental revenue was $109,000 over budget. Building permits were $42,000 more than budget, so very favorable within that category. Your boat launch revenue was $17,000 more than budget. You had some insurance recovery due to a squad accident, so you had $23,000 of income from insurance rebates for that. You had some donations of $10,000, and really the only negative Within your, general fund was your investment income. Investment markets during 2020 were not doing very well, so your investment income, came in roughly $21,000 less than budget. So, again, all of those ended though favorably by $166,000. Expenditures, you had a $3.23 million budget, you came in at roughly 3.25, so about $22,000 over budget within your expense categories. And really a couple contributing factors to that. Again, the squad car accident resulted in the purchase of a new squad car, so your capital outlay came in $72,000 over budget. Your public safety category, again, I mentioned that fire dues that you don't budget for. That results in your your public safety category being over budget by $24,000. And then your public works department came in under budget. So they were under budget by roughly $64,000, and that was in road work and snow and ice costs. So again, those three combined resulted in a little bit of overage in your expenditures. You also had some other financing sources. You budgeted for a borrowing, so you borrowed $325,000 during 2020, so some additional long-term obligations, and you also had $23,000 of income that transfers out of the landfill on an annual basis and into the general fund. So overall, the general fund for 2020 used fund balance of roughly almost $40,000, $39,933. That compares to a budgeted use of $178,000. So you were favorable to what you had anticipated doing by $138,000. And again, those various components that I spoke about are what contributed to that. If we flip back to page 1 then, continuing on at the bottom with the general fund, again, I show the use of fund balance of almost $40,000. That left the town with $515,000 of fund balance within your general fund. 4 pieces of that. So your fund balance is really what do you have available for spending on a go-forward basis. 14,000 of that 515 is what's referred to as non-spendable. Those are prepaid. So what happens is you pay a 2021 expense in 2020, for example, insurance costs. Those don't get recorded as an expenditure until 2021 when they are due, but you had to pay them ahead of time, so the cash is gone. So we show that as non-spendable. You have a restricted piece, roughly $11,000. You have police and park impact fees that the town collects. Those are restricted money. They can only be used for the purpose for which those impact fees were developed. You have a portion that's assigned, $98,000. So that assignment is really just saying we're setting aside these monies for future use. That $98,000 is 3 pieces. It's your equipment replacement fund. You have some money set aside for future employee benefits that may come due, and also your emergency services fund. So again, $98,000 for assigned. The remaining balance, unassigned, this is your working capital, your contingency money you have available to utilize in the short term for whatever need the town may have. That $391,000 represents roughly 12% of your operating budget. We look for that to be somewhere between 10 and 25%, so you're within that range. Again, shows that you have enough cash on hand to cover any costs or contingencies that might come up during the year. Turning to the second page, back to the second page, the last item I just want to bring to your attention, and this is included in your footnotes on page 20. We do a summary of your long-term obligations. So these are the monies that the town owes. As of the end of 2020, you had some long-term obligations or general obligation debts. These are monies that you have due and payable to either the bank or to the state trust fund. Those totals were $1.6 million as of the end of the year. That's made up of roughly 7 debt issues, and those are due and payable through 2028, with one coming due in 2021. So in 2021, if it hasn't been paid already, it will be paid, and then that issue is gone, and then they come due in 2024, 2025, and 2028. So at the end of 2028, if you did nothing else, you would be debt free. Other liabilities, there is some accumulated vacation pay and sick pay that is recorded as a liability on the town's book for the employees and monies that they have coming due. That's $177,000. The last item then, noting the capacity to borrow, the town has the capacity to borrow, this is always something I think is important to note, has the capacity to borrow 5% of its equalized value. That equates to $43.6 million. When you look at that 43.6, you take off the 1.6 that you've already borrowed, and the difference is what you have left. So the town at the end of 2020 has the capacity to borrow an additional $42 million. Again, you're at a very low percentage of your borrowing capacity, but again, I always wanna highlight that. Last item on here is I've included my phone number, my email address. I go through this at a very high level and very quickly, but I would be more than happy to talk with any of you and answer any further questions you may have, but I'd also be happy to answer any questions you might have now.
I do have some.
Sure.
Okay, on your, main report, page 14, this is on reporting insights from the 2020 audit. There's one statement in there, it says compliance with laws and regulations. You said we did not identify any non-compliance with laws and regulations during this audit, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and then, also, just recently in our local newspaper, somebody wrote in there that we've had years of failed audits and they need to be corrected and reconciled. Is this a failed audit?
No.
Have we ever had a failed audit, Kim?
Not that I know
No failed audits?
of,
All right,
17
nothing there.
years.
And you do give recommendations every year, and I see you even beats it up this year, you have more to it. And, you already give recommendations, and we look at that, Kim looks at that, matter of fact, Kim makes changes based on those recommendations, and we have probably quite often, quite often.
I actually enjoy being audited because you guys teach me stuff.
And
So,
everyone would say that.
so when we do that, and again, we'll have, there's recommendations again, okay, probably at our May meeting, we'll look at those again. Kim will look at it herself and make recommendations to us also on what we can and what we can't do. So, that's the only question I had. None? Okay. And actually, since we do have the auditor here, I know we have a full house here, and some people don't want to get pretty soon, but does anybody in the audience have questions for this auditor? This is our auditor that's been with us for a long time, John.
So I have a few questions. In terms of failed audits, I think the line that is in question specifically in the 2017, or the 2019, and I think the 2020 audit, which I don't have in front of me, are that there were concerns about the town not following basic accounting principles. Now, I'm paraphrasing. Can you explain, in your interpretation, what that means?
So the portion of where the town does not follow generally accepted accounting principles is in what I mentioned previously in reference to not including capital assets within their audited statements. That is a standard that was implemented many years ago that requires those to be included if you're gonna be in full compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. At that point in time, the town decided not to do that. That was a decision they made. And we talk about it annually based on the activity of the town, whether or not that is something they need to consider to do. So at this point, the only reason they're not in compliance with GAAP is because of that departure, and that's why we issue a modified opinion because of that.
So why would a municipality choose to do that?
Because capital assets under GASB 34 requires all the assets, so when I say capital assets, I'm talking land, buildings, equipment, infrastructure, to be inventoried, to be booked back at original, or to be recorded at original cost, and oftentimes that data is very difficult to find and to put together. And this goes back, I mean, years, I mean, it's not 10 years, it's not 5 years, we're talking 30 years.
Sure.
So that is just information that typically isn't readily available, and again, the cost benefit of putting that together just hasn't existed, and
So
it hasn't been done.
So it's not done because it's hard.
Well,
50% of the towns do it, 50% don't. We look at it every year, and one of the key things was, are you gonna bond? And we're not planning on bonding, but we'll look at it again this year, that's what we do every year. We
So
look
is
at
that true? You're saying half of
It's hard.
townships,
it is true, yes. I mean, there's many municipalities that choose not to comply with the requirements of GASB 34. It's a choice they can make. The ramification of choosing not to do that is an additional paragraph in the opinion. Doesn't mean the numbers in the financial statements are inaccurate or wrong. Everything else is in compliance with GAAP. It's just because that number isn't included. You ask if it's hard. It's hard, it's time consuming, it's labor intensive. Oftentimes records aren't available, so there's some guesstimation and extra effort that needs to be put forward to do that. So it's not a one-person job, it's a whole town job to be able to do that. So typically that's why it's not included.
So what does a municipality get for doing that work? What happens for doing it or
The
not?
opinion would be changed in that paragraph that says that there's an adverse opinion because of the exclusion of that would go away. So they get a 100% clean opinion.
But can I just mention, you referred to, like, some of that data would maybe be needed if the town were to go out for bonds.
If they go out to the
Right,
bond market, yes.
that's what I'm asking,
That
is what-
potentially,
Right.
a bond rating agency may look at the fact that there's currently a modified opinion as somewhat of a negative. Yeah.
With $42 million borrowing capacity, we would never go into the bond market. There's no need.
Right, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
Or
And
at
why
the time,
pay-
you would need it.
An accountant, because I'm not a CPA, I'm not an accountant, I'm a really good bookkeeper. But why would we pay somebody to do capitalization plan to get rid of a paragraph in our audit? The money out of our taxpayer dollars. There's never been a point to do it.
So then, my follow-up questions, which are different questions, so if anybody wants to talk about this, then we could keep talking about it, but otherwise I have different questions. Is how many years has Baker Tilly audited the town?
I don't know the answer on how many years Baker Tilly has. I have been the partner on this audit for the last 3 years, I believe.
Okay.
So we have partners that rotate on and off engagements, fresh perspectives, fresh audit teams, and
Right.
again, I have been on for 3 years.
And so then, is it possible to include in an agenda packet that I can't see because they're not made available online for us, so I don't know what you're looking at, so I can't see it. But for taxpayer eyes that are curious about the auditing process, because audits are very important. And like Kim said, it's very good to hear that like you want to be audited, because it is one of the most important things that happens to all of our tax dollars. Is it possible to include what I would call like the client-facing resumes of the people on your team that are responsible for doing our audit for our town? Is there a way for us to see who the people are that you work with, your colleagues, that make sure that our money is taken care of correctly?
Well, we don't, obviously, you can go to Baker Tilly's website, you can look up myself, you can look up the individuals that are involved in the audit process. Kim can share the names of the people that are on the audit team. I oversee the audit team, and there's 2 additional individuals. We have a quality reviewer at Baker Tilly, that's all that individual does, is look at governmental financial statements. And again, the team that is dedicated to the town of East Troy, much like all the rest of our municipality, this is all we do. We only do governmental work, so I believe we're more than qualified, but again, I'd encourage you to look on Baker Tilly. All of our resumes, all of our information is included out there on the website.
To be clear, I'm not questioning your qualifications.
No,
I'm
Understood.
asking for transparency.
of course.
That's it.
All right, one last question for Wendy, so we can move on here. Anybody else have a question back there? Anybody? Okay, and I'm sure if there's any individual questions, John, get them to Kim, she'll get it to,
Don't worry about it.
get Wendy.
I'm used to, get me
All right.
off by you all the time, so it's
All right,
fine.
Wendy, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Good thing. All right, then we have, quotes for the 2021 loan for road working on fire truck chassis.
Because the fire chassis payment came up early, we'll have to, and it's farther down on the agenda, of authorizing Attorney Mills to do a budget amendment for that. But we're going to have to look at